The weekend sun felt like it had saved all its warmth for today, a deep, bone-soothing heat that made you believe things might actually be okay. I gripped my sister Chloe's hand tightly as we navigated the river of people flowing through the city's main outdoor shopping promenade. The air smelled like cinnamon-roasted nuts and coffee, and just being able to walk with her like this, like any normal big brother, watching her eyes go wide at every glittering thing in a shop window, this was the kind of day I would have died to have. "Ethan, look, that teddy bear, its bow tie lights up." Chloe tugged hard on my hand, her face tilted up to mine in a grin. Her smile was so clean, so pure, it felt like it could shine a light on all the history I could never wash off myself. I ruffled her hair, about to say, "If you like it, it's yours," when the smile froze on my face. The plate glass window of a jewelry store across the way acted as a cold, unforgiving mirror, reflecting the profile of a woman. Black dress, skin like porcelain. She was looking down, slowly, deliberately, sliding a diamond ring on her finger. The light caught the stone and shot a glare so sharp it made my eyes ache. Even from a million miles away, even if she were nothing but ash. I know her. Madeline Shaw. My ex-wife. The woman I thought I had finally escaped, whose obsessive nature could suck all the oxygen from a room. It felt like an ice-cold hand had reached into my chest, squeezed my heart until it stopped, and then let it go, only for it to start hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, a frantic beat that made my bones hurt. My blood felt like it flash froze and then instantly boiled over. My fingertips went numb. Wasn't she supposed to believe I was dead? The car crash I'd so meticulously staged, the death certificate that was more convincing than the real thing. I had lived like a rat in the sewer for 2 solid years, all for this. For this one afternoon of breathing free air with Chloe. One goddamn shopping trip. Just one. Are you kidding me, universe? "Ethan." Chloe's voice was laced with concern. She tugged my sleeve, her small hand wrapping around my frigid fingers. "Your hand is freezing. Are you okay?" Her voice yanked me out of the icy depths of my terror. "Right? Chloe. She's here. I can't panic. For her, I can't fall apart." The clock was ticking. I had to be gone before she saw us. I spun around, using my body to shield Chloe, trying to use the crowd as cover to get the hell out of this nightmare. "Ethan Cole." A voice, soft with a hint of uncertain probing, but the tail end of it flicked out like a snake's tongue, cold and venomous, sliding straight into my ear and up into my brain. My feet were suddenly nailed to the pavement. The blood in my veins turned to slush. She saw me. She didn't just see me, she knew me. Even with the different haircut, the scruffy beard, the cheap t-shirt and jeans I'd bought at a discount store. To her, I would always be her property, branded and tagged. Despair washed over me like a cold tide. Her voice took on a sickly sweet smile. The sharp click-clack of her heels on the stone walkway started up, unhurried, deliberate. Each step was a death knell ringing in my heart. "It really is you, Ethan." I turned, my movements stiff and robotic, and met the eyes that had starred in every one of my nightmares. They were stunningly beautiful, but filled with a possessive hunger that bordered on madness, and something else. A chilling, ecstatic joy of finding something she had lost. She tilted her head, her smile as sweet as a razor blade dipped in honey. Her gaze swept over a terrified Chloe like she was inspecting a piece of luggage, before locking onto my face, raking over every inch of it, as if trying to reclaim the last 2 years in a single look. "I heard you died." Her red lips parted, each word spoken softly, gently, yet they hit me with the force of a physical blow. "You have no idea how hard I cried. I almost cried my heart out." Her tone was so intimate, you'd think we'd just seen each other yesterday. As if my death was just a bad dream she was finally waking from. And now the dream was over. The lost lamb had wandered right back in her cage. "Run!" A voice screamed inside my head, but my legs felt like they were welded to the polished concrete. It wasn't that I didn't want to run. I couldn't. Not far behind Madeline. 2 men in black suits stood like silent, iron statues. They looked casual, but they were positioned perfectly, blocking every possible escape route. I knew them too well. These were the guys who handled problems. The kind of guys who could make a person vanish without a trace. Chloe was terrified, hiding behind me, her small hands locked onto my arm. Her voice trembled. "Ethan, who is she? I'm scared." I kept her shielded behind me. Using every ounce of strength, I had to force a smile that felt more like a grimace. It's nothing. Just someone I used to know." I turned back to Madeline, my throat as dry as sand. "Madeline, it's been a while. You've got the wrong guy." "The wrong guy?" She let out a soft laugh, as if I'd said something impossibly naive. She took a step closer. The scent of her expensive perfume, a scent I knew all too well, washed over me as her cold fingers reached for my face. I flinched away like I'd been shocked. Her eyes darkened for a split second, but the syrupy smile never left her lips. "Your bones, your eyes. If you were burned to ash, I could scoop up a handful and know which pile was you. Ethan, you hurt me so badly with your lies." People were starting to stare. She stood there, the picture of elegance, a wronged woman of wealth and class. And me, scruffy, panicked, looking like some transient who just snatched a little girl. The contrast itself was a humiliation. "We have nothing to talk about." I tried to make my voice firm, but it came out brittle. "Please, just leave. Leave." She looked at me as if I'd just told the funniest joke in the world. Her eyes slid past me to where Chloe was hiding, a look as cold as a snake's tongue that made my skin crawl. "And who is this? Is this why you hid from me for 2 years? Your new girl?" She paused, her voice dropping lower, sharper, laced with a malicious insinuation. "She looks so young." The vile suggestion in her tone ignited a flash of rage in me, but it was just as quickly extinguished by a deeper, colder wave of fear. "She's my sister." I practically snarled, my voice cracking with anger and terror. "Oh, your sister?" Madeline raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her expression screaming, "Yeah, right." The feeling radiating off her, the accusation that I, her property, would dare to have a secret she didn't know about, was so strong it was almost a physical pressure. "You know, Ethan," her voice was a conspiratorial whisper now, the kind of tone lovers use, but the words were freezing. "I hate it when other people touch my things. And I hate it even more when my things lie to me." She reached out again, a deceptively intimate gesture, as if to fix the collar of my shirt. I recoiled so violently, I stumbled backward into a passerby, nearly losing my balance. I felt like a stray dog. One of the men in black took a silent, menacing step closer. The pressure mounted. "Call the cops." The thought flickered and died. What would I tell them? That my picture-perfect ex-wife was a possessive, stalking psychopath who nearly drove me insane. Where was the proof? They'd get tangled up in a he said, she said. Chloe would be dragged into it. The truth about my fake death would come out. The consequences were suffocating to even think about. Every time I had tried to handle things the normal way, she, and the power she represented, had crushed me, turning it into more trauma. In front of her, my dignity was as fragile as tissue paper. Just as I was about to suffocate under her all-knowing gaze, frantically trying to shield Chloe from Madeline's horrifying expression, it happened. Under my ribs on the left side, the old scar, the one I got from the accident I staged to escape her, let out a sudden, sharp, stabbing pain like a needle being twisted inside me. I instinctively clutched the spot. Madeline's eyes flickered down on my hand, just for a fraction of a second. It was so fast I could have imagined it. But in that glance, there wasn't a shred of confusion. Only a cold, knowing contempt. In that one look, I understood everything. She knew. She'd always known. She knew the truth about the accident. She might have even despair, heavy and cold like a soaked blanket, wrapped around me, layer by layer, squeezing the air from my lungs. I could barely stand. The only way out was to make her believe I was dead again, or to break free completely. But was that even possible? She wasn't just a person. She was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. "It looks like," Madeline smiled, her voice soft but absolute, as if announcing the start of the game she'd already won. "We need to find somewhere a little more private to catch up." She drew out the last 2 words with relish. "To talk about your miraculous resurrection. And about this dear sister of yours." This wasn't an invitation to catch up. This was a one-way ticket to hell. Catch up? Go with her back to that gilded cage so she could lock both me and Chloe inside? No fucking way. A cold sweat trickled down my spine like an insect. Chloe was trembling behind me like a frightened rabbit. I held her tighter. My mind was racing, running so hot it felt like it was about to short circuit. Call the cops? Make a run for it. Both were dead ends. What else? What leverage did I have? My eyes darted around frantically, the curious faces in the crowd, the bright storefronts, the reflective pavement, and up and to the side, a small, black, unassuming security camera, and the throbbing pain of the old wound under my ribs. That look in her eyes. She knew. She'd known the truth about the accident all along. She might have even been the one behind it. Otherwise, why would she have that look of smug contempt, like she was watching me replay a trick she'd already figured out? All her threats were built on the assumption that I was helpless, that I wouldn't dare make a scene. She was too confident, certain I was still the same Ethan Cole she could manipulate at will. So I had to do the opposite. Just as Madeline lifted her chin slightly, signaling the two suits to move in and escort us, I took a sharp breath, and instead of backing away, I lunged forward, getting right in her face. In a voice just loud enough for the immediate circle of onlookers to hear, a voice trembling with a desperate, cornered anguish, I yelled, "Madeline, what more do you want from me? Wasn't almost killing me in that accident 2 years ago enough for you? Do I have to actually die right here in front of you before you'll be satisfied?" My voice cracked, laced with a sob, and it worked like a magnet, snagging the attention of every single person around us. At the same time, I clutched my side where the old injury was, my face contorted in pain. The cold sweat beading on my forehead and my reddened eyes made me look like a man pushed to the absolute brink. You had me followed, you had me watched, even when I was lying in a hospital bed. You came to my room to force me to sign papers. I barely survived. All I want is to live a quiet life with my sister. So why won't you just leave me alone? Is my death the only thing that will make you stop? I twisted the timeline, blurred the details, but the core accusations, that she was connected to my near-fatal injury and that she was relentlessly harassing me, landed like daggers among the gawking crowd. The atmosphere shifted instantly. A few women who had just been watching the drama unfold now looked at Madeline with open hostility, their murmurs full of sympathy for me. "Oh my God, she looks so put together, but she's a monster. He said she tried to kill him once already." Someone raised their phone. The camera lens pointed squarely at us. The poised, elegant smile on Madeline's face froze solid. She clearly never, ever imagined that I, the fish she thought was already in her net, would dare to try and tear the whole thing down in a suicidal, scorched earth maneuver. She was a master of weaving webs of control in the shadows. The one thing she couldn't stand was being dragged into the harsh glare of public judgment, especially with accusations that could shatter her perfect image. For the first time, a flicker of genuine panic crossed her face. It was gone in an instant, but the damage was done. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, trying to regain control, but a slight tremor in her voice betrayed her. "Am I lying?" I let out a bitter laugh, pointing to my side, tears welling up on cue. "You know damn well how I got this. You want me to go pull the hospital records right now. You want me to recount the details of the accident for everyone here." The crowd's murmuring grew louder, a rising tide of condemnation. "Get this on video. Post it on Twitter. What a psycho. Ma'am, you look like you have everything. Why would you be so cruel?" Her two suits, seeing the situation escalating, didn't dare touch me. They shifted uneasily, trying to block the cell phone cameras. Madeline's face was a mask of fury, cycling through shades of red and white. She looked like she'd been stripped naked in public and slapped. She stared at me, the venom in her eyes so potent it felt like it could burn holes in my skin, but she was trapped. She couldn't make a move. She took a deep breath, her voice a low, icy hiss forced through clenched teeth. "Ethan Cole, you are something else." For a single, fleeting moment, seeing her standing there, flustered and cornered by the whispers and stares, the 2 years of fear and rage I'd bottled up found a tiny release valve. It was a twisted, satisfying feeling. For a split second, I felt like I had finally won a round. But the feeling vanished faster than a shooting star. Madeline suddenly smiled again. It was a fraction of her usual elegance, but 100 times more terrifying. Ignoring the cameras and the staring eyes, she stepped forward until she was right next to me, her lips almost touching my ear. Her voice was a whisper only I could hear, a soft, slow, final judgment. "Ethan, you're still so naive. You think this will make me let you go." Her breath was cold, carrying that signature perfume, like a snake's tongue flicking against my skin. The more you struggle like this, the more fun it is for me. Her red lips brush my earlobe. The game is just getting started. And don't forget, she added, her eyes flicking with deliberate, soul-deepening dread to Chloe, who I was still shielding behind me. I know all about your weaknesses now. With that, she gave Chloe one last, meaningful look, then turned like a victorious queen, parted the crowd, and disappeared down an escalator with her bodyguards. I was left standing there, the pathetic flicker of victory completely snuffed out, replaced by a cold so profound it seeped into my bones. She knew about Chloe. She would never let me go, and she would never, ever let Chloe go. I grabbed Chloe and practically ran out of the mall, hailing a cab like our lives depended on it. The whole way back to the cramped little apartment we called a hideout, I kept looking over my shoulder, paranoid, making sure we weren't being followed. The moment we were inside, I slammed the door, shot the deadbolt, and slid the chain into place. My back hit the cold metal of the door, and I slid to the floor, my body completely drained of strength. My heart was still trying to pound its way out of my chest, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Chloe was a mess, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe, her face streaked with tears. Ethan, who was that woman? She was so scary. Was what she said true? Did she hurt you 2 years ago? I scrambled to pull her into a hug, stroking her back over and over. My voice was a raw whisper. It's okay now. Shoo, don't be scared, I'm here. She's just a crazy person. She was just talking nonsense. I'll protect you. I will never let her hurt you. But inside, my own heart felt like it had fallen into a frozen lake. Protect her? How? I knew better than anyone what Madeline was capable of, the resources she had at her disposal. Now that she'd found me, she was like a spider that had found a fly in its web. She would never let go. My worst fears came true with sickening speed. The next day, I went to my part-time job at a convenience store. My boss, who was usually all smiles, couldn't even look me in the eye. He shuffled his feet and stammered for a full minute before finally spitting it out. Hey, Ethan, business has been slow lately. We're gonna have to let you go. My stomach dropped. I knew instantly. I didn't argue. I didn't say a word. I just nodded and left. Still clinging to a sliver of hope, I went to the temp agency where I usually picked up day labor gigs. The guy who ran the place, who was usually happy to see me, just scowled and waved me away before I even opened my mouth. Nothing for you. All dried up. Go on, get out of here. One after another, every door slammed shut. She was moving fast, suffocatingly fast. She was systematically cutting off every lifeline, strangling my income, trying to starve me out until I had no choice but to crawl back and beg her for scraps. The feeling was nauseating, like being slowly strangled by an invisible net. The more I struggled, the tighter it got. I had one last resort. I went to an ATM to pull out what little cash I had left, enough to at least get us through the month. A single, cold line of text on the screen shattered my last hope. Account frozen. Please contact your financial institution. My last lifeline was gone. I was still reeling from the financial gut punch when a new, more terrifying one landed. Chloe came home from school that day with her eyes red and puffy from crying. She told me, between hiccuping sobs, that a couple of mean-looking women in dark clothes had stopped her outside the school. They'd asked her a ton of questions about me, what I did all day, if I'd been meeting with anyone unusual, and they'd asked Chloe if she was my girlfriend. Then they'd forced a brand new iPhone into her hands, their smiles cold and predatory. Here, little girl, if your brother changes his mind, he can use this to call your big sister. Hearing that, my blood ran cold. I snatched the phone from her hand like it was a venomous snake and slammed it onto the floor, stomping on it until it was nothing but a pile of shattered glass and plastic. Ethan, Chloe screamed, terrified. I pulled her trembling body into a hug, my insides twisting with a toxic cocktail of rage and fear. It hurt so much I felt like I was going to be sick. First my money, now this. Harassing my sister. Behind it all, I could see Madeline's face, her expression a cruel, playful smirk, like a cat toying with a mouse. She was sending a message, loud and clear. You can't run. Your sister's safety is in my hands. All your struggling is pointless. The power imbalance was crushing me. I knew nothing about her next move, while she seemed to know everything about mine. I was a blind man waiting for the next punch, and I had no idea where it would come from. That evening, I was numbly checking our mailbox when I found a plain cardboard package with no return address. My fingers started to tremble. A dark premonition seized me by the throat. I tore it open. Inside were two exquisitely tailored, handmade suits, Armani-level quality, in my exact former size. Tucked inside was a note card. The handwriting was Madeline's, elegant, but with a sharp, forceful pressure to the strokes, as if her obsessive personality was baked right into the ink. Ethan, you always look best in these. Discount clothes don't suit you. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. The rooftop restaurant at the Crestwood Hotel. Wear one and come see me. Otherwise, the next gift I send your sister might not be a phone. On the back of the card, attached with a paperclip, was a photograph. It was Chloe, walking home from school that afternoon, her head down, looking sad. The photo was taken from incredibly close, as if the photographer had been standing right beside her. I clutched the card and the photo, my knuckles white. It felt like all the blood had been drained from my body, replaced by an icy dread that wrapped around me, layer by layer, until I was so frozen I couldn't even breathe. This wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't a request. It was an ultimatum, with Chloe's life on the line. Go, and walk straight back into that gilded cage of gold and obsession, sacrificing the fragile peace and freedom Chloe and I had stolen for ourselves. Don't go. The consequences of angering her. That picture of Chloe was like an ice pick stabbing straight into my brain. That was a price I couldn't afford to pay. In the end, I went. For Chloe, I had no other choice. The expensive suit felt less like a second skin and more like a custom-made straitjacket, so tight I could barely breathe. I walked into the rooftop restaurant at the Crestwood Hotel with its panoramic views of the city skyline, feeling like a man on his way to his own execution. The restaurant was completely empty. She'd booked the whole place. Madeline was sitting alone by the window, the candlelight flickering across her face, making her profile look flawless, like a princess waiting for her prince, if you ignore the obsessive, feverish glow in her eyes. When she saw me, her face lit up with a radiance that sent a chill down my spine. She stood and came toward me, reaching for my arm as if the 2 years of lies and my desperate escape had never happened. I snatched my arm back as if her hand were a hot iron. Her smile faltered for a microsecond, but then bloomed again as if my resistance was nothing more than a playful lover's quarrel. She motioned for me to sit across from her. Ethan, you came, after all, she said, gracefully cutting into a steak on her plate. Her voice was as soft as silk. A toast to our reunion. I stared at her, not touching the glass of wine that was the color of blood. Cut the crap, Madeline. Just tell me what it will take for you to leave me and my sister alone. She set down her knife and fork, delicately dabbing her lips with a napkin. Then she asked a question that came so far out of left field it completely blindsided me. Ethan, do you remember what you gave me for our first wedding anniversary? I froze, my heart clenching with an involuntary spasm. It was not a good memory. You gave me a custom-made locket, she said, her eyes getting a distant, dreamy look as she fell into a sick kind of nostalgia. Her fingertips traced the hollow of her throat. Inside, you put a lock of your hair. You said it was so you would always be resting against my heart, with me every second of every day. A wave of cold dread washed over me. What I had once thought was the height of romance now seemed, in retrospect, like a gesture born from a suffocating, pathological need for control. But then you changed. Her tone dropped from sweet to glacial, her eyes sharpening like knives. You started avoiding me, fearing me. You even tried to leave me, all because my love for you was a little more intense than most people's. That wasn't love. I finally broke, my voice a low, ragged snarl in the empty restaurant. It was control. It was torture. It was a prison I couldn't breathe in. It was love, she shot back, her voice suddenly sharp, her eyes wild with a fanatical glint, the candlelight dancing in them like hellfire. Love is possession. It's owning someone completely. Everything about you should have been mine. Your time, your attention, your life. Every single second belongs to me. And you had the audacity to try and run away. She took a deep breath, visibly trying to compose herself, then gave a strange, twisted smile. It was both beautiful and grotesque. But it doesn't matter. You're back now. As for that little girl who popped up out of nowhere, we'll just have to get rid of her. She'll divide your attention, and I can't allow that. You touch one hair on her head, and I swear to God. I shot to my feet, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Sit down, she commanded, her face hardening. The coldness in her eyes left no doubt that if I refused, something would happen to Chloe, and it would happen immediately. We stared each other down for a few seconds. I slowly, hatefully, sat back down, the blood in my veins feeling like slush. A feeling of utter powerlessness wrapped around my heart like a vine of poison ivy. Seeing me submit, her face relaxed into that familiar, cloying smile that always made my skin crawl. Ethan, do you have any idea how much I've done for you? I even took care of that huge problem for you. Problem? My heart skipped a beat. A terrible premonition began to form. She leaned forward, lowering her voice, her tone like that of a little girl eager to share a secret. But every word she spoke was an ice pick, chipping away at my sanity. You remember that private investigator you hired 2 years ago? The one who followed you, took all those pathetic little photos as proof you wanted to leave me. The one you were going to take to my father to force me into a divorce. She paused, a cruel smile playing on her lips. Do you know how he managed to take all your money and then suddenly disappear off the face of the earth, without the police ever finding a single clue? Boom. My mind went blank. The world dissolved into white noise. It felt like all the blood in my body had turned to solid ice. The one who took almost all my savings, who swore he could get me the evidence of Madeline's instability that I needed. He'd vanished right after I paid him. I'd always assumed he'd just skip town with the money, or at worst, that Madeline had found him and paid him off. My voice was a dry, rasping sound, like sandpaper on wood. What did you do to him? I love you so much, Ethan, she said, her tone matter-of-fact, her expression one of innocent, wounded sincerity, as if she was fishing for a compliment. How could I ever let anyone or anything stand between us? He wanted to destroy us, so he had to disappear. I took care of it for you. See, I've always been protecting you, Ethan. Protecting our love. She said it so casually, as if she were talking about stepping on an inconvenient ant. Boom! My entire world shattered. For 2 years, I had hated her, feared her, believed my own carefully planned escape had been thwarted by a tragic accident. But it had all been a game she was controlling from the start. What I thought was my one chance at freedom was just a flaw she had deliberately let me see. The investigator's disappearance. It wasn't a random event. It was an act of protection. The sheer, soul-crushing absurdity of it, mixed with a terror more profound than anything I'd ever felt, seized my heart in an icy grip, squeezing until I couldn't breathe. The person I'd been desperately trying to escape was a monster who had killed for me, and not only felt justified in doing it, but was proud of it. My feelings for her morphed from fear and hatred into something new, a deep, cellular-level dread, a vertigo that came from having my entire reality ripped out from under me. She was 1,000 times more horrifying than I had ever imagined, which meant my being here right now, in this restaurant. This wasn't a reunion. This was just another round in her game of cat and mouse. And I was the mouse, convinced I had a chance, when in reality, I had been in her claws the entire time. Protection? Love? By committing murder? A wave of nausea churned in my stomach. I felt like I was going to throw up right there on the table. But after the initial tidal wave of terror, a strange, desperate coldness washed over me. A fuck-it-all kind of anger started to burn through my veins like high-proof alcohol. What did she think I was? Some kind of doll she could manipulate, whose life and morals were hers to define. She handled a problem for me and expected me to be grateful? I couldn't let this go on. If I just sat here and took it, she would devour me and Chloe, body and soul, until we were nothing but fuel for her insane obsession. I had to do something. A direct confrontation was suicide. I had to use my environment. I had to use her only weakness. And what was her weakness? Her monumental ego, her pathological need to possess me, and her absolute refusal to let her mask of elegant perfection slip in public. I forced myself to calm down, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. My mind raced, my eyes scanning the table, The sterling silver knife, too obvious. The wine glass, maybe the glittering city lights outside the window. A final, fatal escape? Then I saw it. Her phone, resting on the table beside her, lit up for a second with an incoming call. The contact photo was her father, Arthur Shaw, the one man in the world she was even remotely afraid of. A risky, borderline insane plan exploded in my mind. I took a deep breath, forcing the terror and rage from my face, replacing it with a look of utter exhaustion, of a man finally ready to surrender. I let my shoulders slump, my head hang low. My voice was hoarse, laced with the sound of a spirit breaking. Madeline, maybe you're right. She was clearly taken aback by my sudden 180-degree turn. She raised an eyebrow, a flicker of intrigued curiosity in her eyes. Oh, I'm tired, I said, managing a bitter smile that was more painful than tears. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of living every day looking over my shoulder, terrified you'll find me, terrified something will happen to Chloe. I can't do it anymore. I looked up, trying to make my eyes look sincere, vulnerable. Maybe we can make a deal. Talk terms. Madeline leaned back slightly, steepling her fingers on the table. She looked like a queen who had just watched her enemy kneel. A smug, satisfied look of total control spread across her face. What kind of terms? Her voice had softened. My apparent submission was clearly working. A safe place for me and Chloe. A real one. Not back at the mansion. I spoke slowly, and, as I did, my hand, as if trembling with nervousness, accidentally knocked over my water glass. Oh, water spread across the white tablecloth. I shot up, grabbing my napkin and dabbing at the mess, my movements clumsy and frantic. I was the perfect picture of a man who had lost his nerve. Madeline frowned, a flash of annoyance at my clumsiness crossing her face, but she didn't stop me. She just instinctively nudged her expensive phone away from the spreading puddle. Now, in that split second, while her attention was diverted, I used my body and a napkin as a screen. My other hand moved like lightning, my finger lightly brushing the rim of her wine glass. A nearly invisible dusting of the colorless, odorless laxative powder I'd hidden under my fingernail dissolved instantly into the dark red liquid. I continued my frantic, apologetic dabbing, looking utterly pathetic. Madeline waved her hand dismissively, her focus already back on the negotiation. Go on, she prompted, already tasting the victory of locking me back in her cage. I sat back down, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it, but I kept my face a mask of weary resignation. I need you to promise me you will never, ever harass or threaten Chloe again. I want you to set her up with a new identity, somewhere far away from us, where she can go to school and live a normal life. As long as she's safe. I paused, as if making the hardest decision of my life, my voice heavy and strained. I'll come back to you. I knew this was what she wanted to hear more than anything. My life in exchange for Chloe's freedom. It was bait she couldn't possibly refuse. Just as I'd predicted, Madeline's eyes lit up with a feverish, triumphant glow. She was practically vibrating with joy. With a victorious smile, she picked up the wine glass, the one I had tampered with, and took a long, celebratory sip. You should have done this from the start, Ethan, she said, her smile radiant and deeply unsettling. I agree. We can send the little girl to a boarding school in Europe. Give her the best of everything, as long as she disappears from our world forever. And you, she licked her lips, her eyes filled with a terrifying, possessive adoration. You will be mine, forever. I watched her swallow the wine, my heart a cold, dead weight in my chest, a desperate, wildfire burning in its place. A few minutes later, it started. A strange expression crossed Madeline's face. She frowned, pressing a hand against her stomach, clearly trying to fight off a wave of discomfort. Madeline, are you okay? You look a little pale, I asked, leaning forward with feigned concern. I'm fine, she said, standing up. She wobbled for a second, a crack appearing in her perfect facade. I'm just going to use the restroom. She walked away quickly, too preoccupied to even tell me to wait for her. This was it, my only chance. The second she was out of sight, I lunged across the table and grabbed her phone. My hands were shaking, but my movements were fast and precise. I unlocked it, found her father's contact, and typed as fast as I could, mimicking her demanding, spoiled tone. Dad, Ethan's back, but he brought some little tramp with him to threaten me. I'm at the Crestwood rooftop. Send someone to handle this now. I don't want another accident, another body on my hands. Sent. Done. I immediately deleted the sent message and placed the phone back on the table, in the exact same spot. The whole thing took less than 15 seconds. I sat back in my chair, my heart threatening to beat its way out of my chest. Cold sweat soaked through my shirt. I was betting everything on this. Betting that her father, seeing a message from his daughter that was not only frantic but also referenced another body, would take immediate and decisive action. When Madeline came back, she'd think it was just a sudden stomach bug. She would never suspect I'd done anything, and she certainly wouldn't expect her greatest ally to be storming the gates. I was using the information gap, the time delay. I was turning her all-powerful father into her biggest problem. This desperate counterattack had only just begun. The drug worked faster and stronger than I'd anticipated. When Madeline returned from the restroom, her face was ashen, a sheen of sweat on her forehead. Her carefully constructed elegance had crumbled. She glared at me, her eyes burning with suspicion, but she had no proof. We had both handled everything on the table. Ethan, did you? She started to say, her voice weak. Just then, the doors to the restaurant burst open. The sound of heavy, urgent footsteps echoed through the empty room, not the light tread of waiters. We both snapped our heads toward the entrance. An elderly man with a full head of silver hair, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, was striding toward our table, his face a thundercloud of fury. Beside him was a sharp-looking man in his 40s who looked like a high-powered attorney or COO. The old man's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, locked onto us, flickered over me dismissively, and then landed on Madeline with the force of a physical blow. Madeline's face went from pale to ghostly white. This was a genuine, off-script panic. Dad, what? What are you doing here? Her voice was thin, strained. She shot to her feet, a soldier snapping to attention, her physical discomfort momentarily forgotten. I was stunned. Madeline's father, Arthur Shaw himself. He came in person, and this fast. Had my text really been that explosive? Arthur Shaw completely ignored me, as if I were a piece of furniture. All his rage was directed at his daughter. His voice was like a block of ice. Another body? Madeline, when is this madness going to end? Haven't you embarrassed the Shaw family name enough? Madeline was utterly bewildered. Dad, what are you talking about? What body? I didn't. Didn't you? Arthur Shaw yanked his phone out of his pocket and practically shoved it in her face, his hand trembling with rage. Is this not what you sent me? Huh? Madeline leaned in to read the text. Her pupils contracted. She whipped her head around to look at me, the shock and raw fury in her eyes enough to incinerate me on the spot. Ethan, Cole, she hissed, forcing my name through her clenched teeth, her voice high and sharp with the sting of betrayal. It was you. You touched my phone. You dared. She understood everything in an instant. I had used her phone to frame her. My heart leaped into my throat. The plan had worked, but it had also unleashed the full force of her wrath. Just as Madeline looked ready to lunge, to have her father's men seize me right then and there, the calm, middle-aged man who had been standing behind Arthur Shaw took a step forward. It was Mr. Lynch, the family's fixer. He didn't look at me. He inclined his head respectfully toward his boss, his voice steady and professional, a tone that instantly cooled the superheated atmosphere. Mr. Shaw, your daughter is not in a stable state of mind right now, and this is not the place for this discussion. His words were measured, logical. Perhaps it would be best to let Mr. Cole leave. I can assist in calming Miss Shaw and will handle the follow-up regarding the young lady. Chloe, I will ensure she is not disturbed. Every word was calculated to appeal to Arthur Shaw's primary concern: damage control, containing the situation, preventing a public scandal, neutralizing a potential problem. Madeline glared at him, her voice shaking with rage. Lynch, who do you think you are? What is the meaning of this? But Arthur Shaw, clearly rattled by the mention of another body and at the end of his rope with his daughter's behavior, was only interested in shutting the situation down. He glanced at Lynch, then shot a look of profound irritation at me. His expression was a complex mix of anger at me, anger at his daughter, and an exhausted desire for this whole mess to just go away. He finally waved a dismissive hand, as if shooing away a fly. Let him go. I couldn't believe my ears. My heart nearly exploded. He was just letting me go. This Mr. Lynch. With just a few calm words, had he really? Madeline shrieked, trying to rush forward. No, you can't let him leave, Dad. It was him. He set me up. But her father, in his current state of fury, wasn't listening. The two men who had entered with him, his own security detail, moved to block her path. Mr. Lynch caught my eye and gave me a look so fleeting it was almost imperceptible. It said go. Now. I didn't need to be told twice. This was a lifeline from heaven. I scrambled to my feet and practically bolted for the elevator, my fingers trembling as I jabbed the down button. Behind me, I could hear Madeline's hysterical sobs and screams, punctuated by her father's low, furious commands. Ding! The elevator doors opened. I lunged inside, frantically pressing the closed door button. In the final second, through the closing sliver of a gap, our eyes met one last time. The panic and fury in her gaze were gone, replaced by a cold, obsessive hatred. A look that promised this was far from over. A look that said, you will never escape me. The elevator began its descent. I collapsed against the cool metal wall, my legs weak. The cold sweat finally broke, soaking through the expensive suit. My heart was still trying to beat its way out of my ribs, a frantic rhythm of post-adrenaline relief and profound confusion. That man, Mr. Lynch. Who was he? Why did he help me? This sudden, miraculous escape felt less like a victory and more like I had just fallen into a deeper, darker, and far more complex trap. I fled back to the rundown apartment and locked myself in, shaking like a leaf for a long time before my body finally calmed down. The following days were a blur of paranoia. Every footstep in the hallway, every car that slowed down outside, sent a jolt of terror through me. My bank account remained frozen. I couldn't find work anywhere. For the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to be completely and utterly cut off. Desperate, I found a payphone, thinking I could call an old friend from college, maybe borrow some money, or at least find out what was going on. As I stood there, hesitating, an email notification popped up on the cheap burner phone I was using. It was sent to a new, anonymous account I just created. No subject line, no sender. The message was brief and chilling. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. The Willow Creek Lounge, Willow Room. If you want to know why Mr. Lynch helped you, be there. Alone. It screamed trap. 99% chance it was Madeline, tired of her games, setting a final snare. But what choice did I have? Mr. Lynch was the one unknown variable in this whole nightmare, the only piece that didn't fit. Understanding his motives might be the only chance Chloe and I had. Even if it was just a 1% chance of being real, I had to take it. The next day, feeling like I was walking to my own funeral, I arrived a half hour early. I lurked across the street like a spy in a bad movie, watching everyone who went in and out of the upscale hotel bar. Finally, with 5 minutes to spare, I took a deep breath, lowered my head, and slipped inside, finding the private room marked Willow. There was only one person inside. Not Mr. Lynch, and definitely not Madeline. It was the woman who ran the coffee shop near Chloe's school. The one with a warm smile and the friendly chatter who I'd often buy a coffee from while waiting to pick Chloe up. The moment I walked in, her familiar, welcoming smile vanished, replaced by a sharp, calculating coolness. Her eyes were different. She looked like a complete stranger. Mr. Cole, you're punctual. Please have a seat. She gestured to the chair opposite her, her voice flat and professional. I froze in the doorway, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. You sent the email? Who the hell are you? I didn't sit. My hand found the doorknob, ready to bolt. Who I am isn't important, she said, her tone devoid of any emotion. You can think of me as an asset, placed near you by parties who do not wish to see Miss Shaw's. Impulses spiral further out of control. An asset, placed near me and Chloe. An icy chill shot up my spine. Every casual conversation we'd had at her shop about the weather, about Chloe's homework. Was it all a lie? Was she? Where's Lynch? My voice was a dry croak. He is one of us, the woman said calmly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. More accurately, he works for Miss Shaw's father, Arthur Shaw. Her words hit me like punches. Mr. Shaw has been at the end of his patience with his daughter's behavior for a long time. The disappearance 2 years ago, in particular, was a liability. He spent a fortune to make it go away, but it remains a time bomb that could destroy everything. He needs people watching his daughter to prevent her from doing something irreversible. And he needs people to ensure that you, the key victim, are not pushed so far that you decide to burn everything to the ground by going public. I stood there, stunned into silence, the blood freezing in my veins. So it wasn't some miracle. Arthur Shaw wasn't just an angry father. He was a master puppeteer, monitoring everything from the shadows. He allowed his daughter's madness to continue, but kept her on a leash, ready to yank it back when she threatened the family's reputation and interests. Mr. Lynch, this woman, they were his pieces on the board. Me and Chloe, we had never been free. We had just escaped from one visible, psychotic cage into a much larger, invisible one built on cold, rational self-interest. Why doesn't he just stop her? I snarled, feeling the twisted logic of it all start to drive me insane. Stop her. The woman's lips curved into the faintest, most cynical of smiles. How? Have her committed? She's his only child. The best he can do is manage the fallout, like he did at the restaurant. Mr. Shaw hopes you will cooperate, to pacify his daughter to a certain degree, to be with her on the condition that her behavior remains within acceptable bounds. This is the most stable solution for everyone involved. She delivered the most monstrous proposal in the calmest voice imaginable. In return, we can guarantee your sister's safety and her future. She will be untouched, as long as you are compliant. My freedom for Chloe's safety. I was to willingly walk back to that psycho and act as her human tranquilizer. And if I say no, I asked through gritted teeth, my nails digging into my palms. The woman paused, her eyes like cold glass. Mr. Cole, I don't believe you have much of a choice. The consequences of angering Mr. Shaw will be no less severe than angering his daughter. What we are offering you is a transaction that ensures a degree of stability and safety. She glanced at the simple watch on her wrist, her pace quickening. Miss Shaw has discovered you are no longer at your apartment. Her people are on their way here now. The choice is yours. She stood, walked past me without another word, and left the room. I was alone, plunged into the deepest, coldest part of the ocean. The ultimate despair isn't being chased by a monster. It's discovering that the monster's rampage is quietly permitted, even managed, by a more powerful, more rational force. And that you and the person you love most are just pawns, used to maintain a sick, twisted balance. I wasn't even a player. I was just a piece on the board. A few minutes of dead silence passed. Then the door was thrown open with a violent bang. Madeline stood there, her face dark with rage, but her eyes burned with a triumphant, predatory light. She was breathing heavily, having clearly rushed here. Ethan, she cooed, stalking into the room. She turned and locked the door with a decisive click, sealing my fate. You never cease to surprise me. She glanced around the quiet, elegant room, a cold smile on her lips. I think the game of hide-and-seek is over now. She closed the distance between us, her obsessive perfume enveloping me once again. Her fingers, cold and strong, touched my cheek with a possessiveness that was both a caress and a threat. So what should we talk about first? Your little stunt last night? Or how you're going to make up for 2 years of me missing you? Her kiss was a punishment, an assertion of ownership. It was suffocating, inescapable, and it slammed down on me with the full, terrifying force of her madness. And I was trapped, bound by invisible chains of fate so heavy, I no longer had the strength to struggle. Her kiss was cold and conquering, less an act of affection than an assertion of ownership, a brand seared into my skin. It was filled with a possessive disgust that made my stomach churn. I stood rigid as a statue, trapped in her grasp, feeling myself start to suffocate, to fracture under the psychological and physical pressure. Just as my vision started to swim, the door to the room made a soft beep. The sound of an electronic keycard. Madeline froze, pulling back with a snarl of pure fury. Who is it? Get out. The door swung open. Standing there was the woman from the coffee shop. And behind her, Arthur Shaw, his face a mask of thunderous rage. Flanking him, silent and stoic, was Mr. Lynch. Madeline's face went chalk white. Dad, how did you? She whipped her head around, her eyes pinning me like daggers. What did you do now? I was just as shocked as she was. It wasn't me. I hadn't done a thing. The coffee shop woman spoke, her voice calm, her words directed at Arthur Shaw, but landing like a killing blow on his daughter. Mr. Shaw, it appeared your daughter was preparing to engage in extreme behavior. I assessed the situation as unstable and felt your presence was required. Arthur Shaw took in the scene, his daughter physically dominating a man who clearly wanted no part of it, and his face flushed with a deep, apoplectic red. Madeline, you are beyond help. Are you playing me for a fool? Did you send that text to get me here just so I could watch you assault this man? To watch you put on this sick show? He thought she had sent the text from the restaurant, as some kind of twisted power play to show him she had me back under her thumb. No, Dad, it wasn't me. It was him. Ethan framed me. He used my phone. Madeline pleaded, pointing at me, her voice shrill with panic and rage. But her father was done listening to her excuses. His disappointment was a palpable force in the room. Enough. It's always someone else's fault. Look at yourself. Do you have any dignity left? You're acting like a... At that exact moment, my burner phone vibrated in my pocket. I risked a glance. A text from an unknown number. One sentence. This is your only chance. Provoke her. Make her admit what she did 2 years ago. My heart seized. Lynch, the coffee shop woman, they were still pulling the strings. But this was it. This was my shot. Her father's sudden appearance and scathing accusations had pushed Madeline to the absolute edge. The one thing she couldn't tolerate was his disapproval, especially not when she was on the verge of winning me back. Now or never. I shoved her away with all my strength, stumbling back to create space. My voice was a raw, desperate roar, directed at her father. Mr. Shaw, how long are you going to enable her? She's a psychopath. 2 years ago, that private investigator who disappeared, did she really handle that all by herself? Can you honestly say you knew nothing about it? In your world, is a human life just collateral damage to protect your daughter? Then I turned on Madeline, my eyes burning, channeling all my terror into a final, all-or-nothing assault on her deepest, most twisted nerve, her definition of love. Madeline, you talk about love? Is this your love? Murder, in front of your father right now. Tell him you had nothing to do with that P.I.'s disappearance. Tell him those perfect hands of yours don't have blood on them. Your love isn't love. It's a disease, and it makes me sick. Shut up. Shut your mouth. As I predicted, she completely snapped. All her composure, all her sanity, shattered in an instant. She couldn't stand being rejected by her father, but being rejected by me, the object of her love, was unbearable. She screamed, a cornered animal lashing out. What's wrong with loving you? That pathetic I took your money to help you leave me. He deserved to die. I made him disappear. Everything I did for you. For us, I was protecting our love. Who are you to question me? Who are you to call my love disgusting? Who do you think you? Her voice cut off as if a switch had been flipped. The room fell into a dead, ringing silence. Madeline herself realized what she'd done. The color drained from her face, leaving it a waxy, bloodless white. Her lips trembled as she looked in horror at her father. Boom! My mind went blank. I'd done it. I'd gotten the confession. But hearing her admit it so brazenly still sent a wave of absolute terror through me. Arthur Shaw visibly swayed on his feet, staring at his daughter as if seeing a monster for the first time. His furious gaze then swept over me, and finally settled on Mr. Lynch and the woman, his expression unreadable. It was over. Everything was over. She had confessed. In a fit of rage, in front of her father and the man she claimed to love, she had admitted her connection to a murder. It wasn't a legal confession, but for Arthur Shaw, it was the final, fatal bomb detonating in the heart of his family. Madeline, you... Mr. Shaw pointed at her, his hand and voice shaking so violently he couldn't form a complete sentence. He seemed to age 20 years in 20 seconds. Mr. Lynch stepped forward, gently steadying him. Sir, your health. This situation requires immediate attention. Arthur Shaw closed his eyes, his chest heaving. When he opened them again, they were filled with a cold, brutal resolve, and a bone-deep weariness. He looked at his daughter, who stood frozen, catatonic, and waved his hand. His voice was a hoarse, exhausted rasp. "Take her home. Confine her to her room. She's to see no one and have contact with nothing until I say otherwise." The two men who had been waiting outside the door stepped in. They flanked Madeline, each taking an arm. It was no longer a protective escort. It was an arrest. "Dad. No. Dad, I'm sorry. Is it wrong that I love him? Ethan. Ethan, say something. Help me. They can't lock me up. Ethan." Madeline struggled and shrieked, her cries a desperate, piercing sound, the song of a dying swan, as she was forcibly removed from the room. The sound echoed down the hall, a final, ugly end to an era of madness. The room was quiet. Only I, Arthur Shaw, Mr. Lynch, and the woman remained. Arthur Shaw rubbed his temples, looking at me with an expression of profound exhaustion and simmering resentment. "Ethan Cole," he said, his voice heavy, "go. Take your sister and leave this city. Never come back. And if one word of what happened here today ever gets out." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I just nodded. I knew this was the best, the only ending I could ever hope for. I turned and walked out of the room, out of the hotel, my legs unsteady beneath me. The sunlight outside was blinding. I instinctively raised a hand to shield my eyes. My body felt hollowed out, as if I'd just survived a war. There was no joy, no relief, just the bone-weary, empty feeling of a survivor and a vast, disorienting sense of confusion. I was free, I think, but it felt like a vital part of me had been shattered and left behind in that cold, quiet room forever. I took Chloe and left that gleaming, nightmarish city. We drove south, ending up in a small town you'd have to zoom in on a map to find. With the last of my money, I bought the lease on a tiny storefront on the main street. It was old and a little dusty, but the afternoon sun streamed through the front window, warm and golden. I called it Chloe's bookstore. It was her idea. She loved it. Life finally seemed to slow down. I spent my days stocking the shelves with old paperbacks. Nothing valuable, but the feel of them in my hands was solid, real. Chloe started at the local high school, made new friends, and a light came back in her eyes. She would come home chattering about her day, and for the first time in years, the sound was pure joy. We never spoke about the past. It was a scar we kept carefully covered by the quiet routine of our new life. Sometimes, I'd still wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in a cold sweat. The image of a pair of beautiful, obsessive eyes burned into my mind, the memory of a kiss that was both ice and fire stealing my breath. But then I would hear the sound of Chloe's steady, peaceful breathing from the next room, and I would tell myself it was worth it. All of it. This fragile, haunted peace was still peace. I thought that was it. I thought this quiet life was our ending. Until one day, about 3 months later, there was a small, plain package in our box. No return address. My stomach dropped. That old, familiar feeling, like a snake coiling at the base of my spine, returned. I told myself it was just a used book I'd ordered, but my hands were stiff and cold as I carried it back to the store. I sat behind the counter and slid it open with a box cutter. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a bomb. It was an old book, a slightly worn but well-preserved copy of a rare poetry collection I had mentioned just once in a throwaway conversation years and years ago, back when I was still Ethan Cole. I had forgotten I'd ever even said it. She had remembered, and she had found it. My fingers went numb. I opened the book, the smell of old paper and ink filling the quiet store. The inside cover was blank. For half a second, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Then my eyes fell to the back of the title page. There was a line of text, written in that elegant, forceful script I knew as well as my own, each stroke of the pen seeming to press into the very fiber of the paper, as if to carve the words into its soul. "My dearest Ethan, you can't run forever. I'll find you soon. All my love, Em." Thud. The book slipped from my nerveless fingers and landed on the wooden countertop. Outside, the sun was still shining. A few people ambled down the sidewalk. I could hear the faint sound of a television from the shop next door. Everything was exactly as it had been a moment before. But in that instant, my world shattered all over again, freezing over in a heartbeat. The blood in my veins seemed to stop, then reverse course, rushing back to my heart and hardening into a solid, heavy block of ice that sank in my chest, making my entire body ache with a deep, throbbing pain. I was cold. So cold. She knew. She had always known. This escape, this freedom I thought I had finally won. It was never real. The sun streamed through the window, but I couldn't feel its warmth at all.